The morning sky over Seoul was clear when the message came. Every screen on Earth lit up at the same moment. Television broadcasts stopped. Computer monitors flickered. Even phone displays showed the same thing. Strange symbols that moved, like living creatures across every surface. Kang Woo was drinking his third cup of coffee when his computer screen went bright white. He worked as Earth's top language expert, spending his days trying to understand how aliens might talk to humans. For 20 years he had prepared for this moment. Now it was here. The symbols on his screen began to change. They twisted and turned, forming new shapes. Kang Woo grabbed his notebook and started drawing what he saw. His hands shook as he worked. This was real alien writing, and it was happening everywhere on the planet. Down the hall, Park Nari ran toward his office. She was Earth's best diplomat, trained to talk to world leaders and solve big problems. Her high heels clicked loudly on the floor as she rushed to find Kang Woo. "Are you seeing this?" she asked, breathing hard as she entered his office. "The whole world is seeing this," Kang Woo replied. He pointed at his screen. "Look, the symbols are getting simpler. I think they're trying to match our language." On the screen, the alien symbols slowly changed into English letters. Then Korean letters appeared alongside them. The message was being translated as they watched. "Greetings, people of Earth. We are the Velthari Empire. We have watched you for many years." Kang Woo and Park Nari stared at the words. Around the world, billions of people were reading the same message in their own languages. "We come in peace. We seek alliance with your species. Our Emperor Thexmore makes a request. He asks for a human bride to join our peoples." "A bride?" Park Nari whispered. "They want one of us to marry their leader?" The message continued to appear, line by line. "We offer great knowledge in return. Energy that never ends. Ships that travel between stars. Medicine to heal all sickness. This union will bring peace to both worlds." The screen went dark for a moment. Then new words appeared. "We await your answer. We will return in 100 of your days." Then the message ended. Every screen on Earth went back to normal. But nothing would ever be normal again. Within an hour, every government building on the planet was full of shouting people. Presidents and prime ministers called emergency meetings. Scientists argued with military leaders. Religious groups prayed or protested. At the Global Defense Council building in Geneva, General Lee Taman slammed his hand on the table. "This could be a trap," he said to the room full of world leaders. "They study us for years, then ask for one of our women? Why?" Dr. Kim Hana, a scientist who studied the possibility of alien life, stood up to speak. "Maybe that's exactly why we should be worried," she said. "They're treating us like we're animals they can trade with, asking for a human bride like we're giving them cattle." "But look at what they're offering," said President Martinez from Brazil. "Clean energy, space travel, medical advances. These things could save millions of lives." Park Nari had been quiet during the arguing. Now she stood up. "The real question is, why marriage? Why not just trade or make a normal agreement? There's something about human marriage they want to understand." Kang Woo nodded. He had been thinking the same thing. In many cultures, marriage isn't just about two people. It's about joining families, sharing knowledge, creating something new together. Maybe they see it the same way. General Lee Taman looked around the room. "And maybe they see it as the easiest way to control us. Get one of our people close to their leader, learn our secrets, then take over." The arguments went on for hours. Some people wanted to say yes immediately. Others wanted to refuse and prepare for war. A few suggested waiting and learning more about the aliens first. But across the world, something unexpected was happening. Women were volunteering. The first was Dr. Sarah Chen, a biologist from Canada. Then came Maria Santos from Mexico, Dr. Priya Sharma from India, and dozens of others. They came from every country, every background, every age group. Park Nari watched the news reports about the volunteers. Why are they doing this? She wondered aloud. Kang Wu had been studying the alien message again and again. "I think I know," he said. "Look at how they wrote it. They didn't demand or threaten. They asked politely. They offered gifts. They called it an alliance, not a surrender. You think they're telling the truth? I think they're trying to show respect for our customs. They know that forced marriage means nothing to humans. They want a willing partner." Dr. Kim Hana arrived at their office carrying a thick folder of papers. "I've been studying every word of their message," she said. "The way they talk about knowledge and alliance, it sounds like they want to learn from us as much as teach us." Parknari frowned. "Or they want us to think that." Over the next few weeks, more volunteers came forward. The world watched and waited. Scientists tried to guess what the aliens looked like and where they came from. Military leaders planned for the worst. Diplomats prepared for the best. Then came the day that changed everything. A young woman named Yoon Minji walked into the Korean embassy in Washington, D.C. She was 30 years old, with short black hair and serious eyes. She had studied other cultures her whole life, traveling to distant countries and learning how different people lived. "I want to volunteer," she told the surprised ambassador. "Miss Yoon, do you understand what you're asking?" "I understand better than most," Minji replied. "I've spent my life learning about different cultures. I know that sometimes you have to take risks to build bridges between people who don't understand each other." The ambassador studied her carefully. "You could die. You could never come back to Earth. You might be walking into a trap." Minji nodded. "I know, but I also know that someone has to take the first step. If we're too afraid to try, we'll never know if peace is possible." Word of Minji's volunteer status spread quickly. Unlike many of the other volunteers, she had the right background. She understood languages and cultures. She had trained as a soldier, so she was strong and brave. She had studied science, so she could understand new technologies. Most importantly, she had lost her family in the resource wars 5 years earlier. She had nothing holding her back and everything to gain by helping her species move forward. General Lee Taman interviewed her personally. "Why should we choose you?" "Because I'm not afraid of the unknown," Minji answered. "And because I believe that understanding between different peoples is possible, even when they seem impossible to understand." Park Nari and Kang Wu were asked to evaluate all the volunteers. After weeks of interviews and tests, they made their recommendation. Yoon Minji, Park Nari told the council. "She has the skills, the courage, and the right attitude for this mission." "What if she's making a mistake?" Dr. Kim Hana asked. "What if we're all making a mistake?" Kang Wu looked out the window at the busy street below. People were going about their daily lives, but everything felt different now. The knowledge that aliens existed, that they were coming, that humanity's future hung on one woman's decision, it changed how everything looked. "Maybe we are making a mistake," he said, "but maybe doing nothing would be the bigger mistake. For the first time in human history, we have a chance to join something larger than ourselves. We have to try." The vote was close, but Yoon Minji was chosen. She would be Earth's representative, humanity's bridge to the stars, and possibly the most important person in human history. As she prepared for the journey that would change everything, one question remained in everyone's mind. Would she return as the same person who left, or would she become something entirely new? The answer would reshape not just her life, but the future of every human being on Earth. 3 months before the aliens would return, Yoon Minji began the strangest training of her life. Every morning at 6, she reported to a secret facility hidden in the mountains of South Korea. The building looked ordinary from outside, but inside was technology that most people had never seen. Dr. Choi Ji-won was waiting for her on the first day. He was a small man with kind eyes who had spent years studying how people survive in impossible situations. Astronauts, deep-sea divers, and soldiers in dangerous places. He had helped them all prepare for the unknown. "Good morning, Minji," he said as she entered the white room. "Are you ready to discover what you're truly capable of?" The first tests were simple. Minji sat in a chair while machines measured her brainwaves. She solved puzzles while loud noises played around her. She stayed calm while lights flashed in her eyes. Hour after hour, the tests continued. Interesting, Dr. Choi said, looking at the results. Your mind stays focused even when everything around you is confusing. Most people would be upset by now. Minji smiled. I spent 2 years living with a tribe in the Amazon. They played tricks on visitors to see how they would react. I learned that staying calm helps you think better. The next week brought harder challenges. Minji was put in a room by herself for 3 days with only water and basic food. She had nothing to do except think and wait. Many people would go crazy from the boredom and loneliness. Minji used the time to meditate and plan what she would say to the alien emperor. Dr. Choi was amazed. You're one of the strongest people I've ever tested, he told her. Your mind can handle almost anything. While Minji trained her mind, other people prepared for her journey. Admiral Song Hyunwoo worked with the world's best engineers to build a spaceship like no other. The aliens had sent them plans for new engines that could travel faster than light. But the plans were complex, and many parts didn't make sense to human scientists. Look at this, engineer Park Dong-hyun said, pointing to a strange diagram. They want us to build something that bends space itself. How is that even possible? Admiral Song studied the plans carefully. He had built ships for 30 years, but nothing like this. Maybe it's not about understanding how it works, he said. Maybe it's about trusting that it will work and building it exactly as shown. The ship took shape in a secret facility in the desert. It was beautiful and strange, with smooth silver walls and lights that seemed to glow from inside the metal itself. The humans built the parts they understood and carefully copied the alien designs for everything else. They named the ship Unity's Bridge. As the ship was being built, Kang Woo worked day and night to understand more about alien language. The Velthari had sent more messages, each one teaching humans a little more about their world and customs. This is fascinating, he told Park Nari as they studied the latest message. Look at this word here. It can mean joining, growing, or becoming new all at the same time. Their language is much more complex than ours. Park Nari leaned over his shoulder to look at the alien writing. What does that tell us about their marriage customs? I think, Kang Woo said slowly, that when they say marriage, they don't mean what we mean. For them, it might be about actually becoming part of each other somehow. This discovery worried Dr. Kim Hana. What if they want to change her into something that isn't human anymore? She asked during a meeting with the world leaders. What if this whole thing is about taking our people and making them into aliens? General Lee Taman nodded. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. We could be sending Minji to her death or worse. But when they told Minji about their concerns, she wasn't afraid. Every marriage changes people, she said calmly. When my parents got married, they both became different than they were before. They shared their thoughts, their habits, their dreams. Maybe alien marriage is just a more complete version of that. But what if you can't come back? Park Nari asked. What if you become so different that you're not human anymore? Minji thought about this question for a long time before answering. Then maybe I'll become something better than human. Maybe that's what the universe needs. People who can be bridges between different kinds of life. As the weeks passed, Minji's training became more intense. She learned to eat foods that tasted terrible, sleep in uncomfortable places, and stay brave when everything around her was strange and frightening. She studied alien language until she could speak basic words in Velthari. She learned to use the new technology that would power her ship. Dr. Choi tested her again and again. Each time she performed better than before. I've never seen anyone adapt so quickly, he told Admiral Song. She's ready for anything. But late at night, when no one was watching, Minji sometimes sat alone and wondered if she was making the right choice. She thought about her dead family, her parents and younger brother who had died when their city was destroyed in the wars. She thought about the life she was leaving behind, the friends she would never see again, the children she would never have. Then she remembered why she was doing this. Humanity needed to grow beyond Earth. They needed allies among the stars. Someone had to take the first step into the unknown, and she was the one who could do it. 3 weeks before the alien ship was supposed to arrive, Unity's bridge was finished. It was the most advanced machine humans had ever built, combining their best technology with alien science they barely understood. Admiral Song took Minji on a tour of her new ship. "Everything you need is here," he said, showing her the sleeping quarters, the food storage, and the communication systems. "The alien technology will handle most of the flying, but you'll need to know how to use the human systems too." The ship was both familiar and strange. The human parts looked normal. Chairs, control panels, and screens that showed information in Korean and English. But the alien parts were like nothing she had ever seen. Walls that seemed to glow with their own light. Engines that hummed, with a sound that felt good in her bones. Navigation systems that showed stars and distances in ways that made her head spin. "How long will it take to reach their world?" Minji asked. "According to their plans, about 2 weeks," Admiral Song replied. "The ship will jump through space in ways that our scientists still don't understand. You'll be traveling farther than any human has ever gone." The last week of training was the hardest. Minji practiced using every system on the ship. She learned emergency procedures for problems that humans had never faced before. She memorized phrases in alien language that might save her life. Most importantly, she prepared her mind for the possibility that she might never see Earth again. On her final night on Earth, Minji sat in her small apartment and recorded messages for the people she cared about. She thanked her teachers, her friends, and the scientists who had helped prepare her for this journey. But the longest message was for humanity itself. "I don't know what's going to happen when I reach the alien world," she said to the camera. "I don't know if their emperor is kind or cruel, if their marriage customs will hurt me or help me, if I'll ever be able to come home again." She paused, looking out the window at the city lights below. "But I do know that this is the most important thing anyone has ever done. For the first time, humans have a chance to become part of something bigger than one planet, one species, one way of thinking. Maybe I'll succeed, maybe I'll fail. But at least we'll have tried." The next morning, she woke before dawn and prepared for the journey that would change everything. As she walked toward Unity's bridge, she carried with her the hopes and fears of every person on Earth. The ship lifted off silently, rising into the sky like a silver dream. Within hours, it had left Earth's orbit and began the jump to alien space. Behind her, the world waited to see if they had chosen wisely, or if they had sent their representative to destruction among the stars. The journey through space was unlike anything Minji had imagined. For 2 weeks, Unity's bridge traveled through regions where normal rules didn't apply. Sometimes the stars outside looked close enough to touch. Other times, space seemed empty and black for days. The alien navigation system guided the ship through paths that human science couldn't understand. Minji spent the time studying everything the aliens had sent about their world and customs. She practiced their language, learned about their history, and tried to prepare for meeting beings that might be completely different from humans. When the ship finally arrived at the Velthari system, Minji pressed her face against the viewing window and gasped. The alien homeworld hung before her like a giant jewel. Instead of blue oceans and brown continents like Earth, this planet sparkled with silver cities and purple forests. 3 small moons danced around it, each one glowing with its own soft light. "This is Unity's bridge requesting permission to land," Minji said in careful Velthari language, speaking into the ship's communication system. The answer came immediately, in perfect Korean. "Welcome, human ambassador. You are expected. Follow the guidance signals to the Imperial City." The ship descended through clouds that sparkled like diamonds. Below, Minji saw cities that defied everything she knew about how buildings should look. Towers twisted up into the sky like frozen tornadoes. Bridges of light connected floating platforms. Gardens grew in impossible spirals, reaching toward the purple sky. Unity's bridge landed on a platform made of some kind of crystal that felt warm under her feet. As Minji stepped out of the ship, she felt heavier than on Earth, but not uncomfortably so. The air smelled like flowers and rain, with something else she couldn't identify, something that made her feel oddly calm. Waiting for her was a group of 3 aliens. Minji's first thought was that they were beautiful, in a way that hurt to look at. They stood nearly 8 feet tall with skin that changed color like oil on water. Their faces were longer than human faces, with large eyes that seemed to hold starlight. Instead of hair, they had what looked like thin silver wires that moved gently in the breeze. The one in the center stepped forward and spoke in Korean, though his voice had a musical quality that human voices lacked. "I am Emperor Thexmor of the Velthari Empire. You are Yoon Minji of Earth. We have waited long to meet you." Minji bowed in the way she had practiced. "I am honored to be here, Your Imperial Majesty. My people send their greetings and hope for friendship between our worlds." The Emperor's skin shifted to a warm golden color, which Minji remembered meant pleasure or happiness in Velthari culture. "Your journey was comfortable. The human technology worked well with our navigation systems?" "Yes, thank you. The ship performed perfectly." One of the other aliens stepped forward. A female, Minji thought, though it was hard to tell. "I am Velnara, Chief Scientist and Cultural Advisor to the Emperor. I will help you understand our customs and translate when needed." The third alien remained silent, but his skin showed patterns of deep blue and green that Minji couldn't interpret. "Come," Emperor Thexmor said. "We have prepared quarters for you in the palace. You must rest and adjust to our world before we discuss the alliance." They traveled to the palace in a vehicle that floated above the ground without making any noise. Through the transparent walls, Minji watched the alien city go by. The people on the streets moved in graceful patterns that looked like slow dancing. Their buildings seemed to grow rather than being built, with walls that curved and flowed like frozen water. The palace was even more amazing than the city. It rose from the ground in spirals and curves, made of the same crystal material as the landing platform. Inside, the walls glowed with soft light that seemed to come from the material itself. Gardens grew in rooms without ceilings, reaching toward the open sky. Minji's quarters were larger than her entire apartment on Earth. The Maya walls could change color when she touched them. The bed was soft as clouds but firm enough to sleep on. Water flowed from taps without handles, responding to her thoughts somehow. That evening, she joined the Emperor for dinner. The food was strange but delicious. Fruits that tasted like music, vegetables that changed flavor as she chewed them, drinks that made her feel warm and happy. "Tell me about human marriage customs, Gear," Emperor Thexmor said as they ate. "We have observed your species for many years, but this aspect of your culture confuses us." Minji thought carefully before answering. "For humans, marriage is about 2 people choosing to share their lives. They promise to take care of each other, to be honest with each other, and to face problems together." "But why do humans need such promises? Why not simply live together when it pleases you and leave when it does not?" "Because," Minji said slowly, "the promise itself makes the relationship stronger. When you know someone will stay with you even during difficult times, you can trust them completely. That trust lets you become closer than you could otherwise." The Yao Emperor's skin showed patterns of deep thought, swirling silver and blue. "Among the Velthari, we join minds when we wish to understand each other completely. But this joining is temporary. When it ends, we remain as separate as before." Velnara joined the conversation. "The Emperor believes that human bonding might be different, more permanent, more transformative." "What do you mean by joining minds?" Minji asked. "We can share thoughts and memories directly," Velnara explained. "For a short time, we become like one consciousness with 2 bodies, but we have never found a way to make this connection last." "And you think human marriage might teach you how?" Emperor Thexmor leaned forward. "We think that human emotions, your capacity for permanent love and loyalty, might be the key we have been seeking. Our species has become very logical, very efficient, but we have lost something important." "What have you lost?" "The ability to grow and change," he said sadly. We solve problems by thinking through all possibilities and choosing the most logical answer. But this means we rarely discover new possibilities. We never surprise ourselves, Minji began to understand. You want to learn how to be creative again? Yes. And we believe that by truly joining with a human mind, not temporarily but permanently, we might regain what we have lost. But what would happen to me in this joining? Minji asked. Velnara answered carefully. You would gain access to our knowledge, our logical thinking processes, our long lives. You would become more than human. And would I still be me? That, said Emperor Thexmore, is what we hope to discover together. Over the next several days, Minji learned more about Velthari culture. Their society was perfect in many ways. No crime, no war, no poverty or disease. But it was also static. They had not created new art in centuries. Their technology advanced slowly because they only pursued improvements that logic said would work. They lived long lives but experienced little joy or wonder. We are dying as a species, Velnara explained as they walked through one of the palace gardens. Not physically, but in every way that makes life worth living. We need what humans have. Your chaos, your emotions, your ability to hope for impossible things. But why marriage specifically? Why not just cultural exchange or trade agreements? Because true change requires true commitment, Emperor Thexmore said. He had joined them in the garden. If we are to learn from each other, we must trust each other completely. We must become vulnerable to each other. Among both our species, marriage represents the deepest form of trust. Minji thought about this as she explored more of the alien world. She saw their art museums filled with technically perfect but emotionally cold sculptures and paintings. She visited their schools where children learned efficiently but never laughed. She watched their people go about their daily lives with grace and precision, but little apparent happiness. Then she thought about Earth, with all its problems and struggles, but also its music and poetry, its laughter and dreams, its capacity for people to love each other even when it wasn't logical to do so. I think I understand, she told the Emperor on her 7th day on his world. You want to combine the best of both our species. Yes. But this requires more than simple cooperation. It requires becoming something new together. And you're willing to risk changing yourself permanently? Emperor Thexmore's skin showed deep gold patterns. I have lived for 800 of your years. I have seen our empire grow across many star systems. I have learned all there is to learn about being Velthari. Now I wish to learn what it means to be more than Velthari. Minji made her decision that night, sitting in her crystal room and looking out at the alien stars. She thought about her family, dead in the wars on Earth. She thought about humanity's future among the stars. She thought about the lonely emperor, who had lived for centuries but had never truly felt alive. The next morning she found Emperor Thexmore in his private study. I accept, she said simply. His skin blazed with colors she had never seen before. Joy and relief and anticipation all mixed together. Are you certain? He asked. Once we begin the bonding process, there will be no returning to what we were before. I'm certain, Minji said. Someone has to take the first step. If this works, it could change both our species for the better. If it doesn't, she shrugged. At least we'll have tried something beautiful. The ceremony would take place in 3 days, Velnara explained. During that time, both Minji the bonding ceremony took place in the heart of the palace, in a chamber that Minji had never seen before. The walls were made of the same crystal as everything else, but these crystals pulsed with their own rhythm like a slow heartbeat. In the center of the room stood 2 chairs that seemed to be grown rather than built, their surfaces covered with thin golden wires. Velnara explained the process as Minji and Emperor Thexmore prepared. The chairs will connect your nervous systems directly. Your thoughts and memories will flow between you. But this is not like our temporary mind joining. The neural pathways that form will be permanent. What does that mean for us? Minji asked. You will always be able to feel each other's thoughts and emotions. You will share knowledge instantly. In many ways, you will become 2 parts of one consciousness. Emperor Thexamore looked at Minji with his star-bright eyes. "Are you ready?" Minji nodded and sat in her chair. The golden wires moved on their own, gently touching her head, her hands, her heart. They felt warm and alive against her skin. The Emperor took his place in the other chair. As the wires connected to him, his skin began to glow with soft blue light. "Beginning neural connection," Velnara announced from her control panel. At first, Minji felt nothing except a slight tingling where the wires touched her. Then suddenly she felt something that wasn't her own thoughts. Curiosity. Wonder. 800 years of memories flowing like a river. She saw the Emperor's childhood on a world of crystal cities, his education in logic and science, his rise to power, his long, lonely years ruling an empire that had forgotten how to dream. Then she felt his emotions as he watched humanity from afar. His fascination with their music, their art, their ability to love without logic. His desperate hope that contact with humans might save his people from their cold perfection. At the same time, Thexamore was experiencing Minji's memories. Her childhood, in Seoul. The death of her family in the wars. Her years studying other cultures, always searching for ways to bring different people together. Her decision to volunteer for this mission, not from desperation but from hope. The flow of memories and emotions grew stronger. Minji felt her human creativity mixing with alien logic. Mathematical concepts that had always confused her suddenly made perfect sense. At the same time, she felt Thexamore experiencing human emotions for the first time. The pure joy of a child's laughter, the bittersweet beauty of a sunset, the fierce protection a mother feels for her child. Something strange began to happen. The golden wires connecting them started to glow brighter. The crystal walls of the chamber pulsed faster. Velnara's instruments showed readings she had never seen before. "The neural connection is stabilizing," she announced, but her voice sounded worried. "But the energy output is much higher than expected." Minji and Thexamore barely heard her. They were too busy becoming something new. The change started in their minds, but it didn't stop there. Minji felt her brain creating new connections at impossible speed. Her thoughts became faster, clearer, more complex. She could hold dozens of ideas at once and see how they all related to each other. At the same time, Thexamore felt warmth spreading through his consciousness for the first time in centuries. Colors seemed brighter. The simple act of breathing felt like a miracle. He understood suddenly why humans wrote poetry about ordinary things. "The energy is spreading beyond the chamber," Velnara reported, her voice now alarmed. "It's affecting the entire palace complex." She was right. The change wasn't contained to just Minji and Thexamore. Somehow, their transformation was sending waves of energy through the crystal structures of the city. Every Velthari within miles began to feel something they had never experienced before. A servant dropped the dish he was carrying as sudden emotion overwhelmed him. A guard found herself humming a tune that came from nowhere. A scientist looked at a problem she had been working on for years and suddenly saw a creative solution that logic had never suggested. But the effects weren't limited to the alien world. Somehow the energy was traveling across space itself, reaching all the way back to Earth. On Earth, Dr. Kim Hana was working in her laboratory when she suddenly stopped and stared at her research with new eyes. For months she had been trying to solve a problem with genetic diseases. She had approached it logically, systematically, the way scientists always did. Now, all at once, she saw a completely different approach. Instead of fighting the genetic errors, why not work with them? Turn the weaknesses into strengths? It was illogical, but somehow she knew it would work. Similar experiences were happening to humans all over Earth. Engineers suddenly understood alien technology they had been struggling with. Artists found themselves creating works of beauty beyond anything they had imagined before. Even ordinary people felt their minds working in new ways, seeing connections and possibilities they had never noticed. Kang Wu was studying alien language when the change hit him. Suddenly, the complex grammar that had puzzled him for months made perfect sense. More than that, He could feel the emotional meanings behind every word, the way the Velthari language carried feelings as well as facts. Park Nari was in a diplomatic meeting when she paused mid-sentence. She had been trying to negotiate a trade agreement between two stubborn countries. Now she saw exactly what each side really wanted, beneath all their political posturing, and knew exactly how to give it to them. Back on the alien world, the bonding ceremony was reaching its climax. Minji and Thexmore were no longer separate beings sharing thoughts. They had become something new, a hybrid consciousness that was both human and Velthari, but also more than either species had ever been alone. Through their joined awareness, they understood what was happening. The neural connection had created a quantum field that connected all conscious beings across space. Humans were gaining Velthari logic and processing power. Velthari were gaining human creativity and emotional depth. "Is this what you planned?" Minji asked, though she wasn't sure if she spoke aloud or just thought the question. "No," Thexmore replied through their shared consciousness. "This is far more than we hoped for. We are not just joined, we are becoming the bridge between our species." Velnara worked frantically at her instruments, trying to understand what was happening. The energy readings were off the charts, but they weren't dangerous. Instead, they seemed to be improving everything they touched. Plants in the palace gardens were growing faster and stronger. Damaged equipment was repairing itself. Even the crystal structures of the buildings were becoming more beautiful and complex. The transformation continued for hours. When it finally ended, Minji and Thexmore opened their eyes and looked at each other. They were still recognizably themselves, but changed in profound ways. Minji's eyes now held flecks of silver starlight. Her movements had the fluid grace of the Velthari. Her mind could process information at speeds that would have been impossible before. Thexmore's skin showed emotions in constantly shifting patterns of color. His formal, logical speech now carried warmth and humor. For the first time in his long life, he smiled with genuine joy. "How do you feel?" Velnara asked them. "Like I've been asleep my whole life and just woke up," Minji said. "Like I've been living in black and white and suddenly discovered color," Thexmore added. But they were not the only ones who had changed. Reports were coming in from across both worlds. On Earth, humans were showing increased intelligence, better problem-solving abilities, and what scientists were calling intuitive technology use. The ability to understand alien devices without studying them. On the Velthari worlds, the aliens were experiencing something they called creative chaos. Sudden bursts of artistic inspiration, emotional connections to their work, and innovative solutions to old problems. Dr. Choi Ji-won, who had trained Minji for her journey, found himself understanding psychological principles he had studied for years, but never truly grasped. "It's like someone gave us a manual for how consciousness really works," he told his colleagues. Engineer Park Dong-hyun looked at the alien ship designs that had confused him for months and suddenly saw how to improve them. "We can make these engines twice as efficient," he announced to his amazed team. General Lee Taemin, who had opposed the mission from the beginning, found his strategic thinking enhanced beyond anything he had experienced. He could see battle plans and diplomatic solutions with a clarity that seemed almost supernatural. Even more surprising, the changes were affecting children most of all. Human children began showing telepathic abilities. Not strong ones, but enough to sense each other's emotions and sometimes share simple thoughts. Velthari children, who had always been serious and logical, started playing games and creating art for the pure joy of it. "We have become something new," Thexmore said as he and Minji watched the reports come in. "Both of our species are evolving, in real time." Is this good or bad, Minji wondered. Through their shared consciousness, she felt his certainty. It is necessary. There are threats in this galaxy that neither of our species could face alone. But together, as this new form of consciousness, we might have a chance. What kind of threats? Thexmore's emotions turned dark, and through their bond, Minji saw images that terrified her, ships of terrible Dia. The first signs of trouble came 3 weeks after the bonding. On Earth, General Bak Juan stood before a crowd of angry humans in London. Behind him, large screens showed images of children with silver-flecked eyes and adults working with alien technology as if they had always known how to use it. "Look at what they've done to us," he shouted to the crowd. "Our children are changing into something that isn't human. Our minds are being controlled by alien influence. This isn't evolution, it's invasion." The crowd roared its agreement. Similar protests were happening in cities around the world. People who were frightened by the changes wanted them to stop. Some demanded that the government bring Minji back from the alien world. Others wanted to prepare for war against the Velthari. "We must resist this contamination before it's too late," General Bak continued. "We must save humanity from becoming alien slaves." On the Velthari homeworld, similar resistance was growing. Zethkalar, an ancient advisor who had served the Empire for over 1,000 years, gathered followers who were angry about the changes happening to their people. "Emperor Thexmor has betrayed us all," he told his supporters in a secret meeting. "He has allowed primitive emotional chaos to infect our perfect society. Our children waste time with useless activities they call play. Our scientists pursue impossible dreams instead of logical research. We are becoming weak and foolish." The resistance movements on both worlds began to work together, sharing plans and resources. They didn't want their species to become hybrids. They wanted to return to the way things had been before contact. But they weren't the only ones taking action. Deep in space, far from both Earth and the Velthari systems, massive ships moved through the darkness. The Morgax Collective had been watching and waiting, and now they saw their chance. Admiral Crexthorne commanded the largest war fleet in known space. His ships were powered by the enslaved minds of conquered species, each vessel containing thousands of prisoners whose consciousness had been turned into living computers. "The humans in Velthari have made themselves vulnerable," he told his officers. "This neural bonding they have created makes them stronger, but it also connects them in ways we can exploit. Strike at one world, and both will feel the pain." Morgax had conquered dozens of civilizations using the same strategy. They would wait until species became dependent on cooperation, then attack with overwhelming force. The survivors were enslaved and their mental energy harvested to power more ships. "How long until we reach their systems?" Crexthorne asked his navigator, a being that had once been a proud warrior from a now extinct world. 17 days to the human world, 20 to reach the Velthari," the navigator replied in the flat tone of the enslaved. Meanwhile, on Earth, the resistance led by General Bak was growing bolder. They stormed research facilities where scientists were studying the neural enhancement effects. They destroyed equipment that had been built using Velthari technology. Some even attacked people whose children showed signs of the new abilities. Dr. Kim Hana watched in horror as protesters surrounded her laboratory. "This is madness," she told Park Nari over the phone. "They're trying to stop the greatest advance in human evolution because they're afraid of change." "I know," Park Nari replied, "but we can't fight our own people. We need to find a way to show them that the changes are helpful, not harmful." The problem was that many of the changes were subtle and took time to understand. Children were better at solving problems and working together. But that didn't seem important to adults who were worried about alien control. Scientists were making breakthrough discoveries, but the results wouldn't be seen for years. On the Velthari homeworld, Minji and Thexmor felt the growing resistance through their enhanced consciousness. They could sense the fear and anger on both worlds, the way it was spreading like a disease through the populations. "We have to do something," Minji said as they stood in the palace garden, looking up at the strange stars. "If our own people turn against the Alliance, it won't matter if we can defend against the Morgax." "I have been thinking about this problem," Thexmor replied, his skin showing deep patterns of concentration. "Perhaps we have been approaching it wrong. Instead of trying to convince people with words, we should show them what we can accomplish together." That's when they received the message that changed everything. Engineer Park Dong-hyun had been working with a team of enhanced humans and Velthari scientists. Using their combined knowledge, they had detected something in deep space that filled them with dread. Minji, Thexmore. His voice came through the communication system. We've found them, the Morgax fleet. They're bigger than anything we imagined, and they're coming fast. The images that followed showed a fleet of over 3,000 ships, each one the size of a city. The vessels were dark and twisted, covered with weapons that could destroy entire continents. But worst of all were the energy readings that showed millions of enslaved minds powering each ship. How long do we have? Minji asked. 2 weeks, maybe less, Park Dong-hyun replied. They're moving faster than our best ships can travel. Thexmore's skin went pale silver with shock. Even with all our fleets combined, we cannot match their numbers. They have been conquering worlds for millennia while we lived in peace. But Minji felt something else through their bond, not fear, but determination. Maybe we don't need to match their numbers. Maybe we need to be smarter than they are. She turned to address both their worlds through the communication network. On Earth and on every Velthari planet, screens lit up with her image. But now she looked different from the woman who had left Earth months ago. Her eyes held starlight, her voice carried the musical tones of Velthari language, and her presence radiated a confidence that came from truly understanding both species. People of Earth and citizens of the Velthari Empire, she began. I know many of you are afraid of the changes happening to our species. I know some of you want to go back to the way things were before, but I'm here to tell you that going back is not an option anymore. The images changed to show the approaching Morgax fleet. This is what's coming for us. This is why the alliance was necessary, why the bonding had to happen. The Morgax collective has destroyed hundreds of worlds. They enslave entire species and use their minds as fuel for their war machines. If they conquer us, everything that makes us human or Velthari will be lost forever. She paused, letting people absorb the reality of the threat. But we have something they don't expect. We have become something new, something that has never existed in this galaxy before. We are not just two separate species anymore. We are a hybrid consciousness that combines human creativity with Velthari logic. We can think in ways they cannot predict, solve problems they cannot imagine, and work together in ways they cannot understand. The next images showed the amazing things that enhanced humans and Velthari were accomplishing together. New weapons that used principles from both civilizations, ships that flew with impossible grace and speed, battle strategies that combined emotional intuition with mathematical precision. Captain Shin Yeonjin had been one of the first humans to volunteer for enhancement training with the Velthari military. Now she commanded a new type of warship that used hybrid consciousness as its navigation system. Instead of computers calculating the best routes through space, human intuition and Velthari logic worked together to find paths that shouldn't exist. In the test flights, our ships are 3 times faster and more maneuverable than anything either species built separately, she reported to the Joint Command Center. The human crew members can sense danger before our instruments detect it. The Velthari crew members can calculate escape routes in real time. Together, we're becoming something the Morgax have never faced. Admiral Song Hyunwoo was working with his Velthari counterpart, Fleet Commander Zalteth, to design new battle tactics. Look at this, he said, pointing to a strategic display. If we use human unpredictability combined with Velthari precision, we can make the enemy think we're attacking in one place while we actually strike somewhere else. Yes, Zalteth agreed, his skin showing patterns of excitement. And if we coordinate our ships using the neural link that connects all our enhanced personnel, we can respond to changing battle conditions faster than any traditional command structure. As the preparations continued, something unexpected happened. The resistance movements on both worlds began to change their minds. General Bak Juwon watched the military preparations and realized that the enhanced soldiers were not losing their humanity. They were becoming better humans. They still cared about their families, their cultures, their worlds, but now they also had the tools to protect them. I was wrong, he announced to his followers. This isn't invasion. This is evolution. And if we don't evolve, we're all going to die. On the Velthari worlds, Zeth Kalar came to a similar realization. The emotional chaos I complained about is not weakness, he told his supporters. It is the source of new strength. Our people are not becoming less Velthari. They are becoming more than Velthari. With the resistance movements dissolved, both species worked together with desperate urgency. Factories on Earth produced new weapons designed with Velthari science. Velthari shipyards built vessels that incorporated human engineering principles. Most importantly, volunteers from Bot the Morgax fleet arrived at the edge of human space like a storm of darkness. 3,000 warships, each one bristling, with weapons that had destroyed entire civilizations. Admiral Crexthorne stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small allied fleet that had come to meet them. "Only 400 ships?" he said to his enslaved navigator. "The humans and Velthari are even weaker than we thought. This will be over quickly." But as the Morgax ships moved into attack formation, something strange happened. The allied fleet didn't arrange itself in any pattern the Morgax recognized. Instead of neat rows or defensive circles, the human and Velthari ships moved in flowing, organic patterns that seemed almost alive. On the command ship, Minji stood beside Thexmore as they coordinated the defense of both their worlds. Through the neural link, they could feel the thoughts of every captain, every gunner, every engineer in the Allied fleet. 400 ships were moving as if controlled by a single mind, because in many ways, they were. Captain Shin Yonjin commanded the fastest attack squadron. Through the link, she could sense the intentions of Admiral Kim Minseo's heavy cruiser group and war leader Velthak's support vessels. They didn't need radio communications or written orders. Each commander knew instantly what the others were planning. "Beginning first strike pattern," Shin announced, though she hardly needed to speak. Every ship in the fleet already knew what she was doing. The human ships darted forward like a school of fish, too fast and unpredictable for the Morgax targeting systems to track. But these weren't random movements. Each ship's path was calculated by Velthari logic to create the maximum confusion while setting up perfect attack angles. "Impossible," Admiral Crexthorne muttered as his ships tried to respond. "How are they coordinating so precisely without communications?" The first exchange of weapons fire showed him just how outmatched his forces were. The Morgax ships fired their massive energy beams, where logic said the enemy ships would be. But the human vessels weren't where logic said they should be. They were where intuition and creativity had taken them instead. At the same time, Velthari precision weapons struck with accuracy that seemed supernatural. Every shot hit exactly where it would do the most damage, guided by human instinct for finding weaknesses. But the real surprise came when the Allied ships began using tactics that shouldn't have been possible. Commander Yu Seokjin's destroyer suddenly stopped firing its weapons and instead broadcast a signal directly at a Morgax battleship. The signal contained something the enemy had never encountered before: pure human emotion. Joy, hope, love, and determination flowed across space and into the enslaved minds that powered the Morgax vessel. The result was catastrophic for the enemy. The enslaved beings who had been turned into living computers suddenly remembered what they had lost. They felt hope for the first time in years, and with that hope came the strength to fight back against their captors. The Morgax battleship shuddered as its enslaved crew began to resist. Weapon systems shut down. Navigation went wild. The ship spun out of control as the minds that had powered it chose freedom over slavery. "What's happening?" Crexthorne demanded, as similar failures began occurring across his fleet. His science officer, another enslaved being, spoke in a voice that suddenly carried emotion instead of the usual flat tone. "The enemy is broadcasting consciousness-altering signals. The slave minds are remembering their individuality. It wasn't just one ship now. Every vessel in the Allied fleet had begun transmitting the hybrid consciousness signal. Human emotion and Velthari mental precision combined to create messages that reached directly into the enslaved minds of the Morgax crews. Dr. Lim Kangho had discovered this possibility during the preparations for battle. "If we can share consciousness across space," he had reasoned, "maybe we can share it with the enslaved beings too. Maybe we can offer them a choice." The choice was simple but profound: continue to exist as enslaved computer components, or join the hybrid consciousness as free individuals with all the enhanced abilities that brought. Across the Morgax fleet, enslaved minds began choosing freedom. A former artist from a destroyed world felt creativity flowing through her consciousness for the first time in decades. A warrior who had been turned into a navigation system suddenly remembered why he had fought to protect his people. Engineers, scientists, farmers, teachers, all the conquered beings who had been stripped of their identities began to remember who they used to be. And then they began to fight back. The Morgax had always controlled their ships through fear and mental domination. But fear couldn't compete with hope, and domination couldn't stand against the free choice to be something better. Ships began turning on their own fleets. Weapons that had been firing at human and Velthari vessels suddenly targeted their Morgax controllers instead. The perfectly organized enemy formation collapsed into chaos as thousands of enslaved minds chose liberation. "This is impossible," Crexthorn screamed as his own flagship began to malfunction. "Slaves cannot rebel. The conditioning is absolute." But Minji and Thexmore understood what the Morgax admiral could not. Through their shared consciousness, they spoke directly to him across the void of space. "Slavery is only absolute when people believe they have no choice. We're offering your slaves something you never could. The chance to become more than they were before they were conquered." As more Morgax ships fell to internal rebellion, Admiral Kim Min-seo pressed the Allied fleet's advantage. But instead of destroying the enemy vessels, the human and Velthari forces focused on disabling them and rescuing the liberated minds within. "We're not here to conquer," Admiral Song Hyunwoo broadcast to the entire battle zone. "We're here to free everyone who wants to be free." The battle turned into something unprecedented in galactic history, a liberation rather than a destruction. Ship after ship from the Morgax fleet switched sides as their enslaved crews joined the hybrid consciousness network. Instead of 3,000 enemy vessels, Crexthorn found himself commanding fewer than 100 ships, still under Morgax control. But the admiral wasn't finished. In desperation, he activated the most terrible weapon in the Morgax arsenal, a device that could destroy the minds of every enslaved being in his fleet, rather than let them choose freedom. "If I cannot have slaves, I will have corpses," he declared, reaching for the control that would murder millions of liberated consciousness. That's when Captain Shin Yeonjin made her choice. Her ship was the fastest in the Allied fleet, enhanced with both human intuition and Velthari technology. She had enough firepower to damage Crexthorn's flagship, but not enough to stop him before he could activate the mind-killing weapon. Unless she did something that had never been attempted before. "I'm going to try a direct consciousness transfer," she announced to the fleet. "If I can put my enhanced mind directly into their ship's systems, I might be able to stop him." "That's suicide," Admiral Kim replied. "The neural shock will kill you." "Maybe," Shin said calmly. "But maybe it will save millions of people who deserve a chance at freedom." Before anyone could stop her, she activated every neural transmitter on her ship and broadcast her entire consciousness directly at the Morgax flagship. The result was like lightning striking the enemy vessel. Shin's enhanced human creativity and Velthari logic flowed into every system on the ship. She took control of weapons, navigation, life support, and most importantly, the mind-killing device. Crexthorn reached for the activation control and found that his hand wouldn't obey him. Shin's consciousness was now part of his ship's systems and she wouldn't let him commit genocide. "You cannot stop the Morgax forever," he snarled at the air around him. "We have conquered half the galaxy. Others will come." Shin's voice came from every speaker on the ship, carrying both human warmth and alien wisdom. "No, they won't. Because by the time they arrive, there won't be any slaves left to power their ships. We're going to free them all." The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. In the weeks that followed, teams of humans and Velthari worked to integrate the liberated minds into the hybrid consciousness network. Beings who had been slaves for decades or centuries were offered the choice to join something greater, a galactic community based on cooperation instead of conquest. Most chose to join. They became part of an expanding network of enhanced consciousness that connected worlds across the galaxy. Former slaves became free citizens of a new type of civilization, one that offered growth and connection instead of domination and fear. Dr. Kim Hana led the medical teams that helped the liberated beings recover from their trauma. "It's remarkable," she reported to the Joint Council. "When they join the hybrid network, they don't lose their individual identities. Instead, they become more themselves than they were before capture." Professor Oh Sunwoo studied the long-term effects on human society. "Our children are growing up in a galaxy where cooperation across species is normal," she observed. "They're developing abilities we never imagined: telepathic communication, enhanced problem-solving, intuitive understanding of alien technologies." The changes weren't limited to the youngest generation. Adults across both human and Velthari space